here we are, the three of us today.
Our first guest.
I know, our first guest is Gavin. I'm so excited, our colleague and friend. And QC Crime Watch is beginning now. I am Linda Cook.
I'm Sharon Wren.
And this is...
Gavin Wadelick.
Yay!
Thanks for coming here,
Absolutely.
Gavin. Thanks for making time for us. We're so excited.
Right?
You're our first guest, so we're really excited. One of the stories we're going to talk about kind of involves all three of us. So we'd like to talk about the way that we presented this story to the public and then the way the three of us had a hand in covering it. So a trial, I would say a rather interesting trial.
Yes.
Just ended recently with a conviction. We don't have a sentencing yet, correct?
That is right.
And could you tell us, you sat in on the trial, you and I wrote with Gavin
right.
the stories that we would send alerts about, the
Right.
stories that we put on our website. So, Gavin, you covered this trial. Who was the defendant in this trial, please?
It was Christopher Behal.
Okay, and what was he accused of doing?
He was accused of first-degree murder, and it was the second charge. I can't remember the exact thing, but it was something around domestic abuse with the intent for serious harm, something like that. He was accused of killing his girlfriend, Taylor Escontrias McKee, in March of last year, in their apartment.
Right. So that's what he was accused of. How was he arrested? This was a very unusual twist to a story that has several unusual twists.
Yeah, it was. So he was arrested outside, I think pretty close to the Davenport Airport, right by the National Weather Service station, because he crashed his car into a light fixture. He was found drunk, and later when police investigators went to the scene of the death, they had found empty bottles of vodka, and they had found that McKee's body also had a blood alcohol level well above the legal limit.
So this couple both had been drinking. Why did they go back to the apartment if they had arrested this man in Mount Joy or near Mount Joy?
Well, so they took him in for his injuries. He was at the hospital, and while he was at the hospital, he said to the officer that was overlooking him, he kept asking for a wellness check on his girlfriend, and he was concerned. And later he said to the officer that he had visions of violence. He said that he had images in his mind, but he couldn't remember distinctly, images in his mind of him beating McKee with a baseball bat.
Oh, wow. So they did do the Parkview apartment check then, right? That's where they live.
Yes.
And found her body there.
That's right.
And so he was arrested and has been in custody all this time, right?
Yep.
So this is the first time you've covered a trial, what I would call gavel to gavel, correct?
Yes.
And people have preconceived notions, we all do, I think, about the justice system and how it works and how it unfolds.
Right.
What about this will stay with you for the rest of your life? What surprised you?
You know, what surprised me is when you watch court proceedings on TV or in movies, or you read about it in books, maybe less so in books, but you see this very dramatized, to the point procedure. Not to say that actual court proceedings are fluff, because they're not. They are looking for exact details to replicate what happened on, a night of a crime. But some of that stuff, especially I watched it virtually. It was not mundane, but not as big revelation every 3 seconds, because people are in court for 8 hours, and not all of that is this jaw-dropping detail. A lot of it's just confirming information that maybe the last witness had already kind of confirmed. I don't know. That was the interesting thing. But then every day there was still at least one moment where this crazy thing gets dropped on you from a witness that maybe you wouldn't expect that they would have something crazy to say, and it just completely changes the case.
How was it for you to be in front of a jury or I guess not in front of one, but beside one for the first time?
I don't know. Obviously, juries are randomly selected, so it was just random people. I didn't really, obviously I didn't get to talk to them or interact with them at all.
We can't.
We can't. But I didn't get to see them at all until the last day, until the conviction. So I had spent 5 days of this trial not really putting a face to the jury, just this knowing that it's just other force that's behind the camera that's super integral to the case, until the last day where I actually got to see them. So it was kind of interesting, the last day being like, oh, these are the people that are making this decision as I'm seeing this decision being made.
Oh, Sharon, you're the one that told the world about the decision when he was convicted, right?
Right.
Tell a little bit about that, because I'm not sure that our listeners/watchers really know what you and I do behind the scenes.
Well, Gavin was over at the courthouse, and he said he would text me when the verdict came in, which he did, which is something that you and I have done.
Right.
Texting things in, and then I put it on the website. So we were able to get it on the website pretty quickly, thanks to Gavin and his timely texting.
And you sent out an alert. That's how I found out.
This was breaking news.
Right. So through our app, we can send out alerts,
Right.
breaking news alerts, and you did that. And
Yeah.
so we like to think we were seconds after we knew this. Everyone who is connected to our app knew that, right? So that's great. Is there anything you want people to know about jury trials? Like if you would talk to another reporter who's just beginning, or someone who's serving on a jury, what to expect?
I would say even if don't discount all the witnesses, because what the thing that I learned pretty quickly was that witnesses would come in and I would go, okay, yeah, that's important, right? And then another witness would come in and I'd be like, how, what's their connection to this? I don't get it. But then I would listen to their testimony, and they could cover anything. I mean, there was witnesses that covered obviously officers that were at the scene, or officers that spoke with Behal, or people who did the autopsy of McKee. But there was also just like people that had the footage from the night when he crashed, or people that knew the couple, or whatever. It's and you don't necessarily understand the importance of that, but as it kind of goes along, then everything comes together, especially when the defense and the prosecution start to put their arguments together. You see how all these things start to come into play. So I would say, if I was talking to another reporter, don't count out any witnesses, don't count out anyone involved, because there's a reason they're brought in.
Right. So would you like to do this again?
Yeah, no, it was a blast. I thought it was, I shouldn't say a blast, but
No.
it was very interesting. Obviously you see stuff like that in movies and stuff, and you can't really explain the difference until you see it. And it's just very engaging. It's very interesting, and being a part of it in some small way feels very important. So I can't understate that.
That's where we come in as storytellers, and I've covered many murder trials, and not just murder trials, but trials involving violence and trials involving harm. And I think what stays with me is all the ways people hurt each other, and whether justice is really served at the end. I think a lot of the time it is, but then you go off, and I remember the mother said to you, "This won't bring my daughter back."
That's right.
Yeah.
She did say that, and I have been to a couple of sentencings at this point. I've never been, like you said, gavel to gavel. But that's kind of a common sentiment, but there's also the common sentiment that there is a sense of relief when that conviction is passed, or in other cases sentencings are passed. But I mean, that's something that sticks with you. The family, they had lockets of McKee's likeness, a picture of her, and they had that all close to them, and I remember seeing them all get up after the court was adjourned and hug each other and support each other through that. And so it's a really powerful moment, because there's a very crazy mix of a deep sadness in all these people that they lost someone close to them, but also just this euphoria of knowing that justice was served.
Right. Now, I think it's in May is the sentencing, right?
May 30th is the
and
sentencing.
this will be the first time you've sat through this too, I think.
I have been to sentencings, but I have not gone through the whole trial up into the sentencing.
Okay. Have you seen victim statements read yet?
Yes, I have.
That's right. So that is a powerful thing to watch. And I'm sure that as you go through these victim statements, you'll watch the defendant, now the convicted man, Mr. Behal, and see how he reacts. And then Sharon and I can share through our digital means as this is happening.
Right.
Thank you so much, Gavin.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Gavin.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah,
you for being our
absolutely.
first guest.
We really
was a
appreciate you.
blast.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
Hey.
Sharon, you have a really interesting case that you investigated.
Yes, this came down today on our website. It's the story about a Bettendorf woman who was arrested for reckless driving, assault while displaying a weapon, participating in a riot, criminal trespass, and contributing to the delinquency of a minor.
All at a school, correct?
this
Or parts
all-
of it? Well,
oh, no.
Tell us what happened.
Well, what happened, according to the criminal complaint, is that a woman identified as Heather Peterson, age 41, had a daughter. Now, this is where it gets a little confusing because we don't have the minors' names, so we are calling them victim 1, victim 2, and then their gender.
Okay.
So, this woman's daughter and girl victim number 1 had been kind of going at it for a while, and the victim number 1 had been wanting to fight the daughter. Now, victim number 1, victim number 2, and a male victim saw a post on Peterson's daughter's Snapchat wall advertising nicotine vapes for sale.
Okay.
Now, this is not legal because all of the parties involved are minors.
Okay, so we can say boy or girl or victim 1 or
Right,
2 or 3.
right.
Okay, that's why.
So, these people contacted the daughter and arranged to meet at Paul Norton School for the exchange or the deal or whatever we want to call it. So Peterson, her daughter, and the daughter's boyfriend met these 3 other people at the school. The boy told police that he gave his phone to the daughter so she could enter her Cash App information, and he had girl victim 1 walk over at the same time. They began yelling at the daughter to come out and fight him. They tried opening the passenger rear door, and that is when Peterson allegedly began to drive away. Oh, there's so many twists. Hang on. The boy tried to grab his phone, was hanging onto the rear passenger door, and was dragged for about 100 yards. But then he got his hand free and jumped clear. Then the action moved, allegedly, to the back of the school, where all the parties were yelling at each other, shouting profanities. So as the boy and girl victim number 1, we're calling her, got closer to Peterson's car, it accelerated towards them, leaving what police describe as a yaw mark on the blacktop. She drove over the grass and onto a blacktop walkway. The car drove between 2 bike racks, and the victims ran to avoid being struck. We have a description of what a yaw mark is on our website. Okay, so the boy ducked between a couple of bike racks, and the girl ran towards 2 steel posts and a gas main at the building. She got trapped between the gas main and the building, and that's when the daughter's boyfriend allegedly began pepper spraying her. Sprayed her head, her shoulder, her arms. Meanwhile, this vehicle is moving towards girl victim number 2, and the others ran toward the car because they thought she was going to be struck. The car stopped, and everybody started yelling and swearing again. The boyfriend got out of the car and allegedly started fighting with the boy victim out of camera view. As Peterson's car was leaving the parking lot, one of the victim's families arrived in another car, approached her car, and they took off. Oh my. She was arrested on March 13th on a warrant and charged with misdemeanor counts of reckless driving, 2 counts of assault while displaying a weapon, participating in a riot, criminal trespass, and 2 counts of contributing to the delinquency of a minor. She's being held in the Scott County Jail on a cash-only bond of $5,000 and has a preliminary hearing on March 21st.
Oh, boy. So this could have... I kept thinking every time you talk about action or emotion
Right,
here,
right.
That someone could have been hit, someone could have
Exactly.
been injured grievously,
Right.
or
We've
worse.
heard of people who have been literally dragged to death.
Absolutely,
by
we both
vehicles,
covered
so.
these kinds of
So,
incidents.
and this is just so interesting because it started out with these kids allegedly wanting to fight the daughter, and then mom getting involved, and oh my.
We'll be in court for that one as it
Oh,
proceeds,
yes.
and we will watch it certainly.
Yeah.
Well, oddly, another Bettendorf woman was arrested recently. This was over the weekend. She was in custody because police say she hosted a drug house where a meth pipe and narcotics were found. Alicia Keckler is 40. She faces a felony charge of gathering where controlled substances are used and a serious misdemeanor charge of unlawful possession of prescription drugs. So in the arrest affidavits in Scott County, police say that during the last 2 years they've sort of followed the activity at this house. And at this time,
So this wasn't the neighbors like calling and going, there's people in and out.
No,
Okay.
this is the 600 block of 6th Street in Bettendorf. And this area has been well known to the Bettendorf Police Department to be a residence frequented by narcotics users, dealers. So this is on February 25th. The search warrant was executed at the residence. There were people inside. People were read their Miranda rights. Drugs were found, and now this will I guess, unfold in, you could say, in the courts. At the time that this happened, Keckler was being held on $6,000 bond in Scott County Jail and is scheduled for a preliminary hearing next week, March 18, in Scott County Court. Now, this is not a violent crime. No. We've talked about violent crimes today, but still, this can do as much harm, considering drug use was involved,
yes,
as any other kind of violent crime can.
And we have seen cases where someone sells some type of drug to a person and then the person dies from it and the person who sold the drug gets arrested.
Exactly.
So this woman could have been in a similar situation.
Exactly. Well, I'm glad we had Gavin today. Yes, that was really interesting. And it's so nice to hear someone newer to this career and what their thoughts are on storytelling. So we'll have more stories next week, right?
Oh, we'll have plenty of stories next week.
All right. Well, we'll see you then, and lock your doors and please lock your cars.
Cars and houses.